مرحبا وأهلا بكم في برنامج داخل واشنطن. معكم مضيفكم روبرت ساتلوف. ليس ثم شك في أن كوفيد هو أكبر كارثة في زماننا. إنه فيروس غير بشكل كبير طريقة عيش مليارات البشر في كل قارة في العالم. سنبدأ قريبا آمنا الثالث في ذو كوفيد، وحان الوقت لطرح أسئلة أساسية. ما هي الطريقة الصحيحة للتفكير في التحدي الذي يشكله كوفيد؟ من ناحية، هل نحن في حالة حرب ضد الجائحة، معركة إما أن ننتصر فيها أو ينتصر فيها الفيروس؟ في هذه الحالة هل نحن على استعداد لجعل المعركة ضد كوفيد تصبح المبدأ المركزي المنظم للحكومة والمجتمع ولحياتنا اليومية؟ أو من ناحية أخرى، هل كوفيد هو مجرد جزء آخر من الأجزاء الصعب حلها في الحياة التي يتعين علينا أن نعتاد عليها، كسواء حركات المرور والتأخر الرحلات الجوية والزكام؟ في هذه الحالة علينا القيام بخطوات معقولة للحد من المشكلة، مثل وضع الأقنعة في الأماكن العامة، لكن علينا ألا نسمح للفيروس بأن يتحكم بكل ما نقوم به على مدار 24 ساعة في اليوم. لمناقشة الجدل المستجد في السياسة الأميركية والمجتمع حول الطريقة الصحيحة للتفكير فيما يتعلق بالفيروس، يسعدني أن أرحب بمرحبين مرموقين أريال كوين والدكتور مارك دايبل. Welcome back to Dakhel, Washington. Well, we're in early 2022, in the middle, hopefully toward the end, of a spike of another major variant of the COVID virus called Oomicron. We are just a couple of months away from the start of the third year dealing with the virus. Let's talk about the politics, the social aspects, the context of how Americans are dealing with this virus. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Mark Dybel and Ariel Cohen. Thank you both for joining us, Los Angeles and here on the East Coast. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're dealing with Omicron, another spike. What are we getting right? What are we getting wrong? Mark.
Well, what we're getting right is we identified early, and we have the tools to respond if we chose to do so.
Ariel, is that the consensus in the Washington policymaking community, that we've gotten this still mostly wrong?
You know, that's pretty much right on the mark. A lot of lawmakers on Capitol Hill, which is what I'm reporting a lot on lately, are very frustrated with the Biden administration's response to this latest wave. They say that we could have been more prepared when it comes to having those rapid COVID-19 tests that you take at home ready to go, making sure they're available at pharmacies throughout the country, ensuring that the American people had more high quality masks like those KN95s ready to go. And we're just not seeing enough of what we need right now here in the United States.
I would say the mostly wrong for me is it globally. I think the U.S. is doing a heck of a lot better than it had the previous 3 years. There are definitely shortcomings, but I think the administration is doing a far better job than we've done in the past. There are definitely things that we need to improve.
When you say globally, are you referring to how other countries are performing, or our relative indifference in vaccinating the rest of the world?
Both. So vaccinating the rest of the world has not been a top priority for anyone yet. The Biden administration has done better than anyone in the world, but we're still way behind. And Omicron has taught us what many of us knew 3 years ago, that how the virus moves around the rest of the world was going to have a direct impact on our own health. And we're going to have another wave. You know, there's The Cypriotic virus, we have no idea what that's actually going to look like. There's something happening in Brazil that's a little bit scary. We'll see what's happening there. But doesn't matter. At some point, we're going to have, you can't have virus ping-ponging all over between people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated and not have variants emerge. And more problematically, this virus affects many, many animals, many different animal species. So you've got a virus that's not only ping-ponging between vaccinated and unvaccinated people, you've got ping-ponging between animals and humans. So, if we don't have a global response, and vaccines is part of it, we can't have a national response. And that's my frustration, my great frustration. But it's not just vaccines. Vaccines alone won't do this until we have a pan-coronavirus vaccine because of those variants. We need therapies that are easy to administer. We need policies on how to manage during a spike that keeps economies open. We can't close down borders when a virus emerges. By the time we pick up a virus, it's all over the world already, and it probably didn't even start there. We now know Omicron didn't start in Southern Africa, yet we slapped travel restrictions on them. I mean, these are not things we should be doing. We need a much more sensible policy globally to respond as a global network, not a national network. There is no way to have a national response to a global pandemic.
So if that's Mark's primary criticism, Ariel, when you hear people in Washington criticize the response, what is the core of their critique?
Well, if you're talking about people in Washington's criticism of the global response, we're hearing that a lot from the Democrats. As Mark said, a pandemic doesn't have borders. There was a lot of criticism of President Joe Biden's travel restrictions earlier on in this Omicron wave, because as he said, if there's a new variant in another part of the world, it's going to make its way here. You can't stop a new variant. So things that are important are, yes, exporting as many vaccines as we can to countries that aren't producing their own, but also the administration is looking at exporting COVID-19 treatments like Pfizer's antiviral pill that was recently approved that can cut hospitalizations drastically. So there are a lot of steps that we can take.
Let me ask you both about vaccines. It really is one of the remarkable scientific achievements of our time, the speed with which we've been able to identify, manufacture, and begin to distribute vaccines to deal with this, to deal with the virus. How do we explain the reluctance of so many people to want to get vaccinated? And what can and should government, in your view, the view of the political system, what can and should government be doing to convince people, force people to get vaccinated?
Well, we see here in the U.S., the White House instituted vaccine mandates for healthcare workers who receive federal dollars. So that covers a lot of people. And there's also a vaccine mandate in place for private businesses that have a large amount of employees. And both of these mandates are being challenged in the Supreme Court because a lot of people don't want to be vaccinated. There's some vaccine hesitancy. So these mandates have become very controversial. But we've had vaccines available here for a long time, about a year. They've been widely accessible, and still less than 70% of the country is vaccinated. So at this point, it's very hard to get everyone vaccinated, to get as many people vaccinated as we need to reach this elusive idea of herd immunity. That's sort of off the table now. And a lot of my sources are just under the impression that that's not something we can achieve in this country.
Herd immunity can't be achieved anywhere. It's at this point an absurd notion. Herd immunity to what is one question you would ask. And South Africa had 70% of their population exposed to, infected with Omicron, with COVID, going into Omicron. 70%. That was the high number we needed for peak immunity, our herd immunity, 2 years ago, according to the experts. When you have a virus that's that rapidly changing, and importantly, this is a coronavirus, it would be useful if people would learn something about coronaviruses before they talk about it. Coronaviruses, by their nature, have waning immunity. We don't really understand that. We will come to understand why coronaviruses uniquely, there's something about them and their nature that leads to waning immunity. But the thing we've known for forever when we've studied them is that we have natural waning immunity. So if you have natural waning immunity, the notion of herd immunity is patently absurd. And always
just to explain for our viewers, what you mean is, say, unlike getting a polio shot when you're a kid, that protects you for basically the rest of your life. Here, one has to continually boost one's immunity. Is that it?
Coronaviruses, in humans before COVID, cause common cold. There are 3 to 5 variants that cause common cold. What we've known for a while is you can get infected and sick with the exact same genetic variant a year apart with a common cold coronavirus. So we've known for a long time that there's something about coronaviruses that unlike other types of viruses, have a waning immunity component. And then you add to that the current vaccines are basically just attacking spike protein. And that's why some of the data on the J&J vaccine and the T cell response could be important. But that when you're only going after the spike and variations going to occur, and given that we know the immune system will start to wane or be less effective over time after your infection or vaccination, herd immunity just is impossible. And we know all those variants are constantly going to be coming.
Are we collectively in store for boosters every 5 or 6 months as far as the eye can see?
As far as the eye can see right now, yes. The question is what booster? And in all likelihood, it's going to have to change as the virus is changing. But if we can combine, and this, I think we need a warp speed for rapid therapeutics that are pan-coronavirus that you can inhale, that rapidly kills the virus so that you can't spread it. This is all doable. We need vaccines that you can inhale that might be more effective in stopping spread. That's a problem with vaccines and drugs. They don't stop spread in people who are infected. And we know that even vaccinated people carry a lot of virus. So you're never going to stop spread with vaccines alone or oral therapeutics alone. So we need a warp speed for the types of products that are going to be necessary so we can live with this. There is a chance that this will just disappear, that this is the last wave. There is a chance, but you would never, that's a low probability. There's also a chance that the next wave will be highly deadly, not a high probability, but we have to consider these things. So, when you put all that together from a political response, we should be working globally to put up a mechanism. And there have been plenty of recommendations over the last 3 years on how to do this, but the G7, the G20, everyone just keeps blowing it and basically punting it and not making any of the decisions that are necessary to act.
All right, when we come back after the break, we're going to take this conversation and move it into the public policy realm for look at some of the practical issues facing Americans, schools, flying, just living our lives. We'll be back in just a moment. Politics is politics and personal is personal, but sometimes the two are so intertwined, it is difficult to say where one ends and the other begins. Much ink has been spilt describing and explaining the events of January 6, 2021, when a violent mob, revved up by the oratory of our president and his allies, invaded the U.S. Capitol and sought at least to obstruct the confirmation of Joe Biden as president, and at worst, tried to kill those who stood in their way, including the vice president of the United States. But few have done this with the insight, pathos, and personal trauma of Congressman Jamie Raskin, a constitutional law professor and the representative from my district in suburban Maryland, who only a few days before the Capitol insurrection lost his son to suicide, and who a few days later would serve as lead prosecutor of Donald Trump in his second impeachment trial. If you read one book about these weeks that shook our republic, read Raskin's new book, Unthinkable: Trauma, Truth, and the Trials of American Democracy. From losing a child to nearly losing a republic, the unthinkable was, sadly, quite real. Again, my guests today include Ariel Cohen. Ariel is healthcare reporter for CQ Roll Call, a must-read website and newspaper covering Capitol Hill politics and policy. Her primary focus has been covering Washington's COVID response and the battle over vaccines. Also joining us from Los Angeles is Dr. Mark Dybul. Mark is one of our country's most successful public health practitioners, now a professor in Georgetown University's Department of Medicine and the co-director of its Center for Global Health Practice and Impact. Mark previously ran the PEPFAR program that saved, no exaggeration, millions of lives around the world. All right, let's take our conversation about where the virus might mutate into some practical areas of how Americans are trying to deal with it. First, schools. Nothing gets Americans more excited, more agitated than the question of whether their kids should go to school during the pandemic. We've seen some cities like Chicago have teachers vote to close schools. Some cities insist schools stay open no matter what. What is, in your view, the right response? What's the politics of this issue? Ariel?
Well, as you said, this has become an extremely politically charged issue over the past year. Right now, after, as you said, we're heading into year 3 of the pandemic, everyone seems to be on the same page. They want schools to stay open. But how you do that safely is a big policy discussion right now. I mean, here in the United States, we're seeing record-breaking pediatric COVID-19 hospitalizations and cases across the country. The Biden administration is trying to encourage more testing in schools, more masking, more preventative measures that we know can reduce infections and keep kids in the classroom safely. But not everywhere in the country is super, willing to take these steps. We've seen in some southern states that masks are optional in schools. Some southern governors, Republicans especially, are not super willing to implement these mitigation strategies. So it's difficult, but the general consensus is people want schools to stay open during the surge. Kids have suffered enough.
So let me ask you about another public policy question. Airline flying. I just flew from Washington to San Diego and back again. Nobody asked me for a vaccination certificate. I can't walk into a restaurant around the block without somebody asking me for a vaccination certificate. Why is it in America you can fly across country without the federal government, which is in total control of this, requiring a vaccination certificate? What's the politics of this, Ariel?
Well, this has also been a very political issue. You see, there's a pattern. Everything's very political when it comes to vaccines. When it comes to vaccines and flying, there's been a lot of pressure from the unions not to institute a vaccine mandate for flying domestically, but the Biden administration, the White House, has gotten a lot of pressure from outside advocates, from some lawmakers on Capitol Hill to institute this sort of requirement because it does make sense. We do have a mask requirement on domestic flights, and there is a test to travel requirement for international flights, but there are some people within the administration who would like to see this be implemented on domestic flight. There's just a lot of legal hang-ups in there. So it's
in your view, is this would this be a political winner or political loser for the president?
That's hard to say. I think it could be a political winner for a lot of his base, but a political loser for a lot of people who have been more resistant to vaccinations, more resistant to these mandates. They don't like to see the government telling them what to do when it comes to their own health, restricting their movements per se. So it would be a mixed bag.
All right, important note. Thank you for underscoring that message and for helping to explain where we are politically and socially with the dominant challenge that we're all facing today. Ariel, Mark, thank you for joining me on Dakhel, Washington. As the forgettable year 2021 was about to end, I took my 3 sons on a trip to the other side of America. Our holiday was supposed to be different. We had a glorious week planned in Marrakesh, Essaouira, and Rabat, where we lived almost 2 decades ago. But the Moroccan government closed all incoming flights due to Oomicron, and we had to change plans at the last minute. Instead of the sun, fun beach and desert of North Africa, I looked for what I thought would be the next best American alternative, the sun, fun beach and desert of Southern California, Palm Springs and San Diego, to be exact. Well, it didn't quite turn out the way I expected, as wet, cold weather replaced the sun and fun. Palm Springs, a desert oasis, was flooded when we got there, with cars barreling through streets whose infrastructure wasn't built for days of nonstop rain. And I don't think we saw the sun in 4 days roaming the coast and bays of San Diego. Still, it was great to spend a week with my sons, to eat terrific food, especially Mexican dishes and fresh sushi, and to see a different part of America. Some observations from those travels. COVID be damned, it's tough to keep Americans cooped up forever. Airports, flights, hotels, restaurants, perhaps not completely full, they were nearly full, with lots of people eager to roam the country and lead lives as normal as possible. Of course, this was especially the case in our counter-COVID outdoor vacation, strolling the boardwalk of San Diego and hiking some of the most beautiful paths our country has to offer, such as Torrey Pines and Joshua Tree National Park. Second, masks are part of our existence. Perhaps it was because we were in left-leaning California, although much of it in the historically conservative Orange County, but masks are de rigueur, a generally accepted part of life. You may have read about airline incidents of boorish, even violent behavior by some passengers who refused to mask up, but we saw only compliance and good humor. Third, when it comes to catching or avoiding COVID, even with all one's best efforts, Ecclesiastes from the Bible may have been right. Quote, "The race is not to the swift, not the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill. But time and chance happens to them all." Translation, we spent one dinner at an indoors restaurant sitting across the table from a family of friends. 36 hours later, all of them had COVID. On our side of the table, none of us had COVID. What luck. That's America these days, America in the age of Omicron. You do the best you can. You get your vaccines, especially the all-important booster. You mask up, especially with KN95s. You spend as much time outside as possible, and then you live your life. بهذا نصل لنهاية هذه الحلقة من برنامج داخل واشنطن. إذا كانت لديكم أي استفسارات أو تعليقات حول هذه الحلقة، وخاصة حول تأثير كوفيد على النظام السياسي الأمريكي، أرجو أن تتواصلوا معي عبر تويتر على هاشتاغ Inside Washington أو أن تراسلوني مباشرة على @RobSatloff. سأراكم الأسبوع المقبل وإلى أن ألقاكم. شكرا لكم وإلى اللقاء.